The Weaver from Fieldtone is a 2-second sampler with a single knob for sample manipulation. That might sound like a limitation, but actually it's kind of the whole point. Hugh Jones, the designer behind Fieldtone, describes Weaver as a sonic Polaroid camera. With a film camera, you've got 36 shots, so you actually think about what you're capturing. You're in the moment rather than deferring the creative process to later. Weaver works in kind of the same way. You capture 2 seconds, and the module instantly transforms it into loops, rhythms, and textures. There's no undo, no going back. If you find something you love, record it, because the moment you turn that knob again, it's gone forever. Hugh started out by circuit bending, taking devices built to behave predictably and scrambling them into something unpredictable. That philosophy runs through everything Fieldtone makes. The handheld Weaver has sold over 1,700 units, and that's why now there's a Eurorack version. Same core philosophy, but with expanded control and connectivity that modular users have been requesting. I recently released a video on a similar module, the Cutlass's Gloop, but that loop is all about control and method, precise loop manipulation. Weaver is kind of the antithesis when it comes to looping. Where Gloop lets you sculpt, Weaver lets you discover. 2 loopers, 2 different philosophies. Quick disclaimer, Fieldtone did send me this module, but they haven't paid for this video and don't have editorial control. Now, in this video, we'll cover the basic functionality, we'll walk through the front panel, the patch points, the volume controls, and then we'll have some fun with some patching. Okay, let's get started. Sound gets into Weaver either through the built-in microphone or through the audio input here. Plugging in a cable disables the mic. One thing to note, there's no dry signal pass-through. If you want Weaver as a mixed effect alongside your dry signal, you'll need an external mixer. The single knob pretty much works as the entire interface. And it's worth understanding exactly how it works, because it's a little bit different to what you might expect. Fully anti-clockwise is reset. Your sample is cleared and the module is silent. Turn it up and you'll start hitting the record threshold. The LED fades red while it captures exactly 2 seconds of audio, and once recording finishes, as you can hear, Weaver automatically starts playing back your sample with randomized parameters. You're immediately hearing a loop with its own rhythm and its own character. Now here's the thing, turning the knob further doesn't move through different settings, it randomizes again. Every movement generates a completely new variation from your 2-second sample. Think of it less like a knob with positions and more like a re-roll button. The amount of possible outcomes from those 2 seconds is essentially infinite. And the philosophy extends to these random states too. Once you leave a setting you like, you won't recreate it, even with the same sample. There's no recall, no favorites, no undo. Weaver insists you move forward. If you find magic, commit to it and record it, because it won't come back. Turn the knob back to 0 and your sample is wiped, and start again. This switch changes the character of the output. Rhythm mode gives you more percussive, chopped results like you're hearing now. And Hugh says this is where the module really comes into its own in the modular version. However, texture mode is more granular, more smeared. I find myself reaching for the texture mode with drones and tonal material, but rhythm mode with anything percussive. But experiment, because the results will surprise you. Now, this pitch switch was one of the most requested features for the modular version. On the handheld Weaver, texture mode always keeps pitch sympathetic to the root note of your sample, while rhythm mode always randomizes pitch. This switch basically decouples that. The modular version lets you flip it. So you can have rhythm mode locked to root, as we've got here, or indeed rhythm mode randomizing the pitch. And indeed, we can have texture mode randomizing it as well. Now, if you want things to say vaguely musical, keep it en route. If you want chaos, let it randomize. Weaver also splits your loop into 3 distinct elements, each with its own level control. This is new for the modular version. On the handheld, you get what you get, but here you can mix between the different parts of a generated loop. Maybe you love a particular element, like a delayed spacey element, but you want less of the percussive chops. Now you get an opportunity to balance that. If there's one thing I'm slightly missing, I think while I'm very interested in the way these 3 outputs work as gates, it would have been nice to be able to CV control the level of these outputs, but that's a nit, it's only a small thing. All 3 elements sum to the main stereo output, and there's a lot of spatial movement in there. Sounds ping around the stereo field as part of the randomization. Now, as mentioned, each of these 3 elements also has a trigger output with its own LED. This means Weaver doubles as a random rhythm generator. You can use these triggers to clock other modules, fire envelopes, trigger drum synths, whatever you like. And here's the thing, you don't even need to use the sampling. Even if you turn the audio all the 3 levels down, or if you just record an empty sample, as I'm going to do right now, you've got no audio, but you have got gates firing. And Weaver becomes a kind of pure random trigger source for your rack. Now, if you're set to rhythm mode and you've got a clock in, you can also clock that, essentially making Weaver a really, really interesting random clock divider. It's a feature I really appreciate. Now, CV control, and this is where I had to dig a little bit deeper because it's a little different to how you might expect. On most modules, CV and the physical knob interact, so maybe CV is added to the knob position or the knob attenuates the CV input, but because the knob is basically a re-roll in this range, and then here it performs a specific function, Weaver doesn't exactly work in the same way. Let me explain it. So if the Weaver knob is anywhere in the middle, between reset and maximum, the CV input does nothing. The physical knob takes precedence completely. So if I put in a CV signal, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to re-roll each time I do that in any case. However, to use CV control, you need the knob at one of the 2 maximums. So down at minimum, I'm going to put CV in now. You can see it's just recorded a new sample, and I've got a stepped random voltage from Pam's Pro Workout going into the CV control. You can see there it's cycling through different settings. Now, every so often, and the reason you can't hear anything, every so often when it is at fully counterclockwise, it will record. However, what it needs to do before that is to clear the loop. And so this is why my recommendation is to use it actually at maximum. So let me just put in a loop first. So now you can hear something. So let me just turn it up to maximum. And let's put our steps random in again. So again, when the knob was at minimum, CV takes over completely. It can go the whole range. And that means every so often, it goes into the record range and the scrub range as well. When you're at maximum, this disables the record threshold for the CV input. So we're just going to cycle through different rolls of the weave here. I'm kind of making up that terminology as I go along a bit, but you know what I mean. Let me turn up that 3rd loop as well so we can hear everything. So every time my Pam's Pro Workout jumps to a new step to random, it's essentially re-rolling. You could use a module like manual gates here as well, which would be fun. So you could just basically press a big button, and every time you press the big button, Weaver re-rolls. Now, the better way to record here is to use the record input, which you can couple when you've got the Weaver knob at maximum. So let me just grab a CV cable. I've also got, coming from Pam's, a slow gate, which I'm going to put into record. And let me just change the sound of the incoming audio so you can hear that it's actually changing every time it flashes red. There we go. Took a while, but we've got... And the next time it records, because I was playing nothing came in. So my recommendation for how to use CV with Weaver is into the record knob goes a slow gate or a slow LFO or something that basically every now and then just triggers record. And then you take knob, put it at maximum, and then you can put a stepped random voltage, a slow gate, anything basically into there to roll through the different Weaver settings. Let's just try that one more time. Just going to speed that LFO up a bit on the record. So there it made a recording. It's going red again, so it's recording. And then again. You get the idea. So, finally, in rhythm mode, you can sync Weaver to external clock. You can see I've got a blue pulsing LED here, and that's when it's locked into the rhythm. And this keeps your random rhythms in time with the rest of your system. I've just got a simple gate out from Pam's here, which is driving that. So we're in rhythm mode. I'm going to keep it at root. Let's record a new sample. Now, every time we re-roll, we will stay in time with our system clock coming in to the clock input here. Let me just speed that up. I'm going to double it. So now it's moving through the sample quicker. Let's speed it up even more. Re-roll. Now, this is particularly useful if you think about coupling it with these gate outs that we've got on the module. Essentially, even with no audio playing in the sampler, you can play a clock in and kind of clock divide on random settings here. It should be really interesting for creating different on-the-fly drum loops. Let's speed this up even more. See how fast we can go. Morse code territory. Nice. So finally, the LED on the Weaver, that tells you what's happening. The single white flash on boot means it's ready. Turning on, there we go. Single white flash. The fading red means it's recording. That's recording. Let's just pull that down again and start the clock. The blue pulse tells you it's receiving clock. Turn the clock off and it's not receiving anymore. then the shifting greens, yellows, and oranges means it's weaving, doing its thing. Right, that's our walk around the module. Let's have a muck around with some demo patches, see what we think. So, if you're in the market for a precision looper, this is not the one. Weaver is the ultimate happy accidents machine, and I kind of love it. In fact, while I'm constantly deciding and undeciding which Eurorack looper is my favourite, Weaver sits nicely alongside any of them, as you can hear right now as it jams with Oniri. It's not competing with your other loopers, it's doing something none of them do. So let me just recap some of the highlights and the quirks. What I love, the immediacy, capture sound, instantly get music back, no menu diving, no decision paralysis, just commit and move forward. The trigger outputs, while I haven't shown them off in this particular video, even if you never sample a thing, Weaver is a random rhythm generator for your rack. That's a whole instrument hiding inside. The philosophy is a feature, no undo, no recall, no going back. That sounds limiting until you realise it's liberating. You stop second guessing and start listening. The built-in mic, unusual for Eurorack and genuinely useful. Point it at the room, capture something unexpected. And it plays beautifully with other modules. It's not trying to be the centre of your patch, it's a collaborator. Now, quirks and constraints. There's no dry signal pass-through, you'll need an external mixer if you want wet-dry blend, or, as I've been doing here, simply split the signal. The CV behavior isn't super obvious, as I mentioned. Knob in the middle means CV does nothing. Once you understand it, it makes sense. Expect a little learning curve, and it sometimes caught me out where I thought I was applying CV and I wasn't. 2 seconds is all you get. Now, that's the point, but if you want longer loops, you need to look elsewhere. And finally, nothing saves. No favorite settings, no sample storage. What you hear exists only in the moment. For some people that might be a deal breaker. For others, and I count myself here, that's the whole appeal. I've got other modules that do that thing. So, what is Weaver? I feel like Weaver is a meditation on impermanence disguised as a sampler. If that sounds like your kind of weird, you're gonna love it. See you next time.